Hello, I'm Mark Baer. The show is MUSE. We are live at the Museum of Monterey. My guest is Peter Baldwin, actor, director, raconteur, the legend. Good morning, Peter.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Okay, I'm good, and today we're going to do the definitive Baldwin. And we're going to start the early years. You grew up in Chicago. You came to Stanford.
Yeah. There was a time when at Palo Alto they had a community theater, community center theater, and they were doing a play. A friend of mine was in there, close friend, and he challenged me to come to try out for the next play, right? Surprisingly, I got the lead. And so there I was, Barnaby Goodchild, his name was, would be singing and dancing his way down. And there was always a girl, and there was always a bad guy. So that the drama was in each little segment. And so a woman in San Francisco saw it, liked it, and wrote to her friend Sally Biano, who was head of Warner Brothers casting. And I got a return letter from him saying, "You've been highly recommended. Whenever you're in Hollywood, drop in." Okay. I decided I'd take an acting class, and I did. And in that class was a good-looking girl, and I wanted to have it.
Yeah, I was going to say there's always a girl in this story.
Right.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, she eventually married Bob Mathias, if you remember. Melba Weiser was her name. I'm not sure she's alive still, but still beautiful, I'm sure. And she was in the class, and so the class teacher came to class one day and he said, "Okay, I've gotten a little bit of a unique thing. After class, a talent scout from Paramount is coming to interview anyone I suggest, and I suggest everyone in the class, over at the Frost Amphitheater. The caveat is that he's already made his choice of a girl that he's carrying with him from Washington to Oregon to Berkeley to Stanford and to, back to LA. And it's going to be a Life magazine article about this." So he says, the teacher says, "So it's a phony. However, you'll get to meet a talent scout. You get a chance to see how they work." So we start, the class ends, and Melba says, "Oh, let's go." And I said, "No, did you hear what the man said? It's a fix. We don't want to be involved in a fix. He said, why waste our time? A lot of better things we could be doing." And she said, I want to go. Let's go." Okay, whatever you say, dear.
Yeah.
And we walk over. But the little conversation kept us out of the pack. So we were the last two in front of the teacher and the talent scout, a man named Milton Lewis, who I came to find out, did nothing but look for talent. His mother eventually left New York, came out to visit him until she died. That's all he would do. He would just, after she died particularly, he would go out every night to some little theater, obscure place on Santa Monica Boulevard and look for talent. Found Bill Holden, all kinds of good stuff. Anyway, they're walking behind us, and Strick says, "Peter, what?" He says, what other studio beside Warner's wanted you to come down and meet them and test them?" 20th, I think it was 20th. I didn't say it that way. I said 20th, 20th Century Fox, which is a total lie. And remember, Sally Biano said, "When you're in town, stop in." So that perked Milton's ears up. Oh, wait a minute. So he gave me more time than other people, took a 16 millimeter shot of me. First of all, I said, "You understand, I'd done nothing before this. In high school, we would do musical like reviews and stuff. That was it. And I think I was more energetic than on key. But in any case, he said, "Okay, read me some lines." "What do you mean, read you some lines?" "Well, from the play that you did, that you talked about." Okay, well, the girl says, "How do you feel today?" And so I was doing that kind of, like I was reading the script out loud, he, she. Anyway, it was silly, but then he took this 16 millimeter film of me and talking to him. lo and behold, over the weekend and within the next week, I got a call from him. He said, we want to pay you $100 to come down to Hollywood, and what mode of transportation? You want to take the train, or will you drive or fly? He hated airplanes. I said, I'd like to fly. Okay, so they gave me a ticket, sent me a ticket, put me in a motel that was on the, if you know, on Rossmore, right by the Wilshire Country Club, nice little place, and could walk over to Paramount. And they spent a week getting me ready to make a screen test, so which I did. The only thing I can tell you about is that I had a nice, interesting, I was in a necktie like this, and I was in a sport coat, and I walked around the lot afterwards. I had some makeup on, so I went to a closed set. I didn't know what that meant. So I started to open the door, the bell was ringing, and a little red lamp was circulating, and a lovely girl came up to me and said, you can't go in there now. It's proved to be Mary Murphy. Mary Murphy, she was a wonderful girl. She was already under contract, and the girl that he was traveling with. Oh, I didn't notice her that up in Stanford. And she can't go in until that light goes off. Anyway, it's a closed set, you can't go in. Oh, okay, see you later, so long. So she went away. Now the light goes off, I open the door and go in. There I am in my necktie and sport coat and polished shoes, right?
Polished shoes.
Oh yeah, not tennis shoes, like modern like that. So I go in and I say, well, if it's a closed set, that means only people that work here probably can do anything. So I noticed in those days they still had a cable that ran from the back of the camera on the dolly over to the wall where it plugged in and was then recorded in the sound department some miles away. No, not a few 100 yards away, or in a truck just outside the door, but going optical by then. So, okay, so I said, okay, so I picked up a cable right behind the dolly and just held it. Figured there must be some guy that does this kind of job. Now you imagine these guys, then they were even smoking on the set, and there was all kinds of, roughnecks, grips and electricians and all of that. And I'm sure they're like, who's this guy with the tie? But if a guy had a tie, and he might be someone related to the Zukers or something,
yeah.
He might be, not a plant, but, some high up, a suit. He had a suit on, right? So finally, the assistant director from the test came by to visit somebody, and he said, put the cable down. Yeah, okay, it's okay. You're with me now, okay. So anyway, that was it. That was the end of my screen test. They gave me $100, wonderful. And I went back to Stanford, and everyone said, how'd it go? How'd it go? And the only thing I could say is, I don't see myself here next year. I don't know if it's going to be. Now, the Korean War was getting ready. I had a deferment from the Air Force that I never exercised because later I got in the Navy. But the thing is, I just didn't see myself here anymore. It was like a mystic thing. And in fact, they sent
in Stanford, you didn't see yourself in Stanford anymore.
That's right, not here in this spot. Although I did continue to keep that deferment.
Yeah.
But they didn't check yet. Yeah. Stanford at that time didn't take roll. Maybe they still don't. You come if you want to, and that's it. So anyway, to get back to the story, they called, I made a screen test, met a lot of nice people, and a contract shows up, 7-year contract, with options of theirs to either pick up or not, and start paying more money than I was making at Stanford, right?
So suddenly you're going to Hollywood.
That's right. So there's a provision in the contract that there's a 12-week layoff. In other words, there's a 3-month period. If you're not working on a film, there's a break, kind of. When that in the first contract was 6 months, so that was divided up into 6 weeks. They said, go back to Chicago, get all the stuff you want, bring the stuff from your home, say hi to your parents, and come back, and we'll start. So that was it. That's how I made the jump.
Okay, so now we're at the jump, and now I'm going to get you to Italy. So one day there's a woman in the commissary that sees your picture.
Nicoleta Scucciamara was her name. And she was dining with Luigi Luraschi, who was the foreign guy for Paramount, before they broke up, so he was probably in the exhibition part, but they kept an Italian for liaison, I guess. Anyway, they were having lunch in the commissary under these big photos like that on the wall, though my contract had expired. And what happens when you come back from the service, I don't know if you guys know this, so in case there's a war, make sure you join the service. They have to take you back in your job, right? So after 3.5 years in the Navy, I got my job back. Minimum pay had passed me up, so I got a raise to start with. Everything was good. Anyway, this guy was dining with a woman who was an agent and the secretary of who was Xavier Cugat's first wife, Labby Lane, and she was in Mexico and she was her personal secretary. So she was on her way back and just passed by, and she was talking about any young actors we might get or actresses. I mean, like the new wave stuff, like college people and things like that. There's enough of the muscle men over there. So like this guy, she said over her shoulder. He said, oh yeah, he likes to travel, forgetting that it was the Navy that sent me to Asia and all that stuff, right? Anyway, I met her. She asked for some film. What have I got in the way of film? I don't know. So anyway, I went to Hal Wallace, who was on the lot. He was a producer of Jerry Lewis and Lancaster and some very good Martin and Lewis, Burt Lancaster, Elizabeth Scott, Kirk Douglas. He had a nice stable, but it was parked at Paramount. And I asked him if I could have some film because I'd just done a test with somebody. And he said, sure, you did a lot of good work for me, testing. So, as a contract player, they shoot over your shoulder. But the fact is my hair had been sprayed blonde. That pays off later when I got to Italy. But I sent this film via Nicoleta back to Rome. She got me a job, a role in a Rossellini film, Roberto Rossellini.
Roberto Rossellini. Okay, so we will be back with Muse in just a moment. I'm Mark Baer, I'm Peter Baldwin, and when we come back, you're going to be with the Italian Neo-Realists and Baldwin. The Museum of Monterey at Stanton Center is for the community, by the community. Our mission is to tell the stories of Greater Monterey with an emphasis on history, arts, innovation, and our maritime heritage. Throughout the year, we bring you intriguing exhibitions and stimulating events. But to continue to be a center of excellence, we need your donations. Please become a member today. Simply go to our website, museumofmonterey.org, and push a button. And if you make a larger donation, I will come to your house and sing you a medley of your favorite love songs. And remember, the Museum of Monterey at Stanton Center could be the perfect location for your rental event. Check it out, museumofmonterey.org. Hello, I'm Mark Baer. Welcome to the second half of this episode of Muse. My guest, Peter Baldwin. We've taken him from Chicago to Stanford, to Hollywood, to the Navy, back from the Navy, and now we're off to Italy and Roberto Rossellini. Okay, here's where we are.
Right, okay, yeah. Now, the letter that came from an agent that I had met in Hollywood, an Italian agent woman, said, would you work for 3 million lira with Roberto Rossellini? First of all, 3 million. I don't care if they're matchsticks. That's a lot of stuff, 3 million.
Whatever it is.
Right, yeah. I don't care what I didn't know the translation. It was $5,000, but that's okay. That's good. The film for the Roberto Rossellini, and then in parentheses, former husband of Ingrid Bergman. Like no one knew him, but we did know him. He was one of the 3 founders of the Neo-Realism, or 3 names of the realism. Rossellini, De Sica, and Luchino Visconti.
I'm going to interrupt you for a minute and kind of tell you why I'm so fascinated with this. And again, I just interviewed a gentleman, Seth Jarrett, who was just here, and what our conversation is about is how do you create some kind of vibrant art with very minimal equipment. And this is what the Neo-Realists did. It was right after World War II. They had no money, they had no equipment. I mean, they had rudimentary equipment, so to speak, and they created masterpieces. And here at the museum, a couple weeks ago, you and I watched The Bicycle Thief. We saw it. It was so beautiful in black and white on that big screen. 100 years from now, people will be just looking at that. It will still be magnificent. And what you've always told me, was it Rossellini or De Sica who told you?
Rossellini.
Have something to say and say it.
He said, we don't need people in front of the camera. We need good people, whom he thought I was a good person, thankfully, behind the camera. And he said, you should direct. You should get into the making of films. He said, there's only 2 rules. Have something to say, which oftentimes people don't. Right? I've done things that didn't mean they had to be said, but still. And say it. Don't talk about it. Don't say how great it is if you're going to make this film. Just do it. Well, what if you don't have any money? I didn't ask that question, but he presupposed that I would have. He said, you don't need it. You just need the minimal means to take pictures of people, and almost better having not recognizable faces. The star system kind of distorts the situation where you have to,
Suspend reality too much.
To get For instance, when De Sica came to get the money, after having done Shusha, which was about 2 shoeshine boys in Rome with American soldiers and stuff, not the war was done, but he came to get some money. Someone said, I know that in his heart he wouldn't have done it without real Italians, because, but...
Before we get ahead of ourselves, let's go back to Rossellini.
All right. Okay. Roberto Rossellini, I don't know what his background was before that. I know, as you mentioned, De Sica, he was an actor before. Visconti did theater, Piccolo of Milan, which is a famous theater company. I don't know what Roberto's background was, but boy, he could do good stuff. The film we made was high tech with him because he had a Pansanor lens, which he drove himself. Pansanor being a zoom lens, unheard of. His first dolly, he told me, was not a guy pushing a sophisticated thing that carried the camera and stuff. It was him carrying the camera in a baby carriage, right? And so they just made do with whatever it took to take a picture, and then they have real people talking, not acting, talking, And Roberto was a very warm guy. He loved to talk and talk about stuff, and we'd be talking away. I remember at the wrap party, which was a restaurant, he was talking. I was sitting next to him, and it was just, I was basking in the sun of his attention. Someone else over here asked a question, and he went, and I was, whoop! Now, he didn't cut me off. It's just that the ice formed, It's cold over there without him. And he was talking to someone else, charming them and stuff, So.
And then you're married to the daughter of Vittorio De Sica.
Right.
So you're in this. So here's something I just can't fathom this enough, that you had this bird's eye seat. You're so either Zelig or George Plimpton or something, but here you are of no intention of your own, or just no design, and you're in the middle of one of the most important historical moments of film history.
Right. Now, I was there a little after. I went in 1960. By then, they had gotten some of these things like the zoom lens, and they had made some money, all of them. But and there was a cadre of people. Fellini, for instance, Federico Fellini was Rossellini's assistant director. There, the assistant director isn't like in Hollywood, who is part production manager. There is a production manager, but part watch the money, get the shots in, sun's going down, it's getting to be golden time, there'll be overtime. Can't have that. I was in television, of course, then, directing. But he's with the director, so the director might give him a vague thing of the extras, you know? I need more people in the background and things like that. So that was his creative part. But Fellini learned his lesson well, and he took the magic and the fantasy and the pretending to a high point. Anyway, for instance, I like this. I remember this after we had our meeting, our time a couple of months ago, is that in a film that De Sica did called The Sunflower, which represented a woman whose husband was in the Italian army and went and fought the war in Russia. Okay, and a lot of them didn't come back. I don't mean dead, I mean they just didn't come back. And she went to the Ministry of Army or whatever it was and asked, where is my husband? Oh, he's still in Russia, so he didn't come back, so like that. Well, they wanted a whole bunch of women doing this. And the Italians, you know, are expansive with their arms and their, hey, you know, don't bump me and all that stuff. If I go like this, we'd start an argument, and that would be good for the cameras in the background, but it might be a better story. Anyway, De Sica said, get me a rope. And he took a rope around behind 50 people, 50 women, like a slip knot, tightened it until there was a packed crowd, and he shot into this, like, artichoke upside down, you know, of people packed together. And that's how they did it. They couldn't convince, it wasn't that the extras took their, you know, he told the extras, you're asking about your husband. Where's my husband? How much? Where's my pension? And he just, you know, brought him in. So those are the kind of things they had to do. And the extras in Italian films are beautiful because they don't all smile when they're talking, you know, in the background at the restaurant. No, they're just having an argument, guy's falling in love, whatever. They get people off the street. And
they continue off the street.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, again, this experience that we had a couple of weeks ago, just watching The Bicycle Thief on the big screen. And again, as you're saying, they just made stuff happen. So the scene that they come out of the soccer stadium, how did you rent the soccer stadium? How did you create this crowd? Well, they didn't. They just showed up.
Well, what it was, David Lean said, how did you get that exit at the game? And he said, I waited till the game was over. And here they come. They're coming out, and then they play the scene. They may have a couple of guys, and there were more actors, I won't call them, but there were more people from the filmmaking, because they catch this guy himself, the protagonist, stealing a bicycle. And so and people are going by and watching the fight go on, and also, and it was because they did what was happening then. They said this takes place at the end of a soccer game where there's lots of bicycles. You know, people lived on bicycles, and the bicycle in the beginning of the movie, it's shown that it's a guy's truck. It's a guy's his livelihood depends on that. Like maybe in Tunisia, where I was once, a camel got hit by a car, and the guy, that was his life. His camel was what he owned, you know, and he did work for him. But this is the bicycles, and his bicycle was stolen, taken away.
And it was so beautiful. The story was so deep. It was so, again, all the surrealist magic that later was, that Fellini used to evoke was all in De Sica's movie there, all those strange church scenes.
Yeah.
So let's say we've got the young Peter now, for what you learned and what you saw, how they made these pictures.
Yeah.
And if you had that knowledge and you were the young Peter now with this kind of digital equipment, lightweight, no lights, the ability to do what they did, really, because it is now democratic. What do you think you'd be doing with this?
Oh, I think I'd be reading every book I could get my hands on, because I don't feel like I'm necessarily capable of writing a story beginning, middle, end that has an arc and all that. You know, it's novelists do that, and we just saw a movie the other night called chef, and I recommend it to everybody. It's fantastic. Written, directed, and acted by Jean Favreau. But it was, I would just grab one of these little cameras, little Nikon or something like that, and get going, you know.
So you're speaking now to that kid in film school, that kid with the camera, because again, the equipment, now you have the equipment, now you need to know what a story is.
Right, yeah, yeah.
These guys knew what a story is, and these stories, they had something to say.
Right,
And
they had these events, like a guy stealing a guy's bicycle. What could be more simple than that? Well, then they add in the guy has a wife and a son, and the son is disappointed when his father decides finally himself to steal a bicycle because he's got a job that needs a bicycle, right? So that bicycle, like, you know, with the helmet and all that stuff, it's a guy taking a ladder on his back on the bicycle to get to work. And so it was, they made up a story. Cesare Zavattini was De Sica's kind of collaborator in almost all his stuff as a writer, like Sergio Amadei, who was Rossellini's, you know. They fill a story in around some fact of injustice or whatever you know, they want to talk about, you know, or make a film about. Then they use the means at hand, you know. And it's so simple, and everything is so simple. I know.
simple looking.
Yes, yeah.
Man gets a bicycle stolen. He has to go find the guy. Finds the guy, but it doesn't work out. Then he's so frustrated, and his family's so desperate, and he's so desperate that he goes and steals a bike. The crowd catches him. Is about to throw him away. His son is there and witnesses this, and he's just mortified in front of his son, and then they let him go because the father and son together,
yeah.
and they walk home hand in hand together, and that's your ending. So,
Right.
you know, I mean, you can't even imagine pitching a story, but the complexity of
Yeah,
that world.
doesn't he do something? Doesn't he? What happens at the end? What does he have? A victory? He gets a car? No. It ends.
He gets home and he has love and he has the respect, and they.
Of his son.
So that kind of, you know, that you can have something to say, you can say it, and simplicity can be profound. I guess that's
Right.
the lesson of the Italian Neo-Realist.
Yeah, it really was. And as techniques change, they change. However, mostly they still remain with that thought in mind. Even the great Sergio Leone, who did the westerns that Clint was in, the first one, they were done simply, though. You know, it wasn't aerial shots and all that stuff. You know, it was too bad, because too bad that kind of the special effects are like the Grand Guignol of the theater in France. Cut a head off, have it, you know, blood. Get involved with myriad of things you'll never see in your lifetime, which is interesting, you know. But it's the simplicity of the Italian Neo-Realism was in the heart of the director and writer, finding a story that they could put Italian stuff on, you know?
That's it. I've been with Peter Baldwin. I'm Mark Baer with the Museum of Monterey. That's MUSE, and my pleasure.
Me too. Thanks, Mark. Great. Always a pleasure.